What is it?
The main thing I got from it was like this sense of feeling seen and validated.
Well, why does it have to be this way?
This book was placed in my hand for this moment.
Insightful, learned a lot, wrote some quotes that I'm ready to like paint on my wall.
I love this book!
That we just kind of pull out some of the big themes that we see and talk about a few different ones.
I apologize if most of my contribution has K-pop references.
Alternative book title, The Feminine Mystique Part 2. You were really just gay all along.
Welcome to Book Club.
With Julia.
And Victoria.
Two friends with wildly different TV watching speeds who once tried to watch a show together over Zoom and it took about 3 months.
Which is quite fast.
No, it's not!
But we'd like to be your book friends. This is a podcast of the books we just can't shut up about.
This week we're talking about Love in the Big City by Sang-Young Park, the English translation by Anton Hur. We're also going to be talking about the book and the show. And this is a story about a gay man in his 20s trying to date in Seoul, South Korea.
If you have not read the book or watched the show, just know that there are spoilers ahead for both of them, though they do have the same plot. So if you read the book but not seen the show, nothing huge. So if you have read it, you are welcome. If you haven't read it and you don't care about spoilers, you're still welcome too. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, welcome. This show is brought to you by Trader Joe's Garlic Dip. If you...
Yeah. It's literally brought to you. This is what fueled me today. Trader Joe's has not paid me. In fact, I paid them.
Yeah. If you'd like to support us, you can rate, review, subscribe on whatever your platform is currently for listening to podcasts. If you go down to any book links, this book or other books we mention in the show notes, that will take you to our affiliate page on bookshop.org. If you buy a book, we get a very small kickback. Don't buy books from Amazon, guys. Buy them from independent bookstores. And if you'd like to join the book club, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/bookclubwithjv to join one of the tiers for like $3 a month.
So Julia, you approached me to read this book. Where did you first hear of this?
Oh, funny enough, I don't remember where I first heard of the book. But I feel like the first time I thought, oh, we should read this was when we did the episode on the BTS book. It was translated by Anton Hur, the guy who translated this book. And when we were looking into his work, and I was like, oh, hey, he seems really cool. We should do this. I feel like I knew of the book before then, and I have genuinely no idea how. But yeah, so that was how many years ago now? 2?
Yeah.
That we were like, hey, we should read that. The final kick in the pants that I needed to read it was that I saw that they were releasing a movie and a show at the same time. Like, they had the same release month.
I didn't realize it was the same month.
Yes!
That's crazy.
So, I mean, to be fair, the movie went to film festivals first. Like, it was in the film festival circuit first, but it's like popular release happened the same month as the show, which I just thought was hilarious because the trailers were released at a similar time as well, and the posters. And so everyone was getting them confused. Nobody knew what was going on. They were like, wait, they just announced this though. What is this a trailer for? Oh, there's a there's a movie and a show. Anyway, yeah, very messy. But I was like, oh man, these look great. I need to read the book before we watch them. And so I started the book, and then we started watching the show, and it took a while for us to get through the show, and so sometimes I would read ahead, and then sometimes we would watch 2 episodes, and the TV watching would get ahead, and it kind of went back and forth. So there are times when I had already seen the show, and that was informing how I was reading, because I've got notes in my book of like, oh, I'm so surprised that it's actually like this in the original source material. And then there's other times where I read first, and then it informed how I watched the show. So it was a really interesting way to consume it. I will say they were very much in conversation with each other, so it felt like no other way to do this episode than to talk about both.
Yeah.
The show was much more heartwarming for me. The book is really sad. I recently asked a sort of friend of a friend who's Korean, are there any Korean novels that are happy? Like, do they exist? And she was like, I've never read one. So I don't know if that's her taste or if it's just like they don't exist. Whereas like I feel like the Korean drama tradition is a bit more fantastical, always has a happy ending with dramatic camera sweeps and whatever, which is not the style of the show, but it's the tradition that it's working with. And I feel like neither one was super bingeable.
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't read the book super fast. And I couldn't watch the show super fast. You'd watch, like, the most devastating thing ever happen in the show, and you'd be like, all right, that's it for 3 weeks.
That's all we can do tonight.
That's all we can do tonight. So, it's a really beautiful work, and both are deeply personal and relatable, and we'll get into that as well. One of my favorite details in the book specifically are some of the translation choices. You can tell, like, this is a queer novel written by a queer man, translated by a queer man, because, like, some of the translation choices of Korean queer slang to American English queer slang was, like, just really tickled me, and I thought was brilliantly done. Yeah, I thought, like, this is, you know, why it's important to have good translators who can, like, actually speak to the lived experience and, like, know how people talk in different languages, right? Anyway, that's my little ramble. What was your experience?
You were like, let's read this book together and we can watch a TV show together. And I was kind of in a little funk last winter. I'm trying to remember, like, the exact rationale. I think you were like, it will be easy. You don't have to do much. We will not do this for the podcast. This is just for friendship, which it was. And then here we are doing it on the podcast. But it was a very fun reprieve. I don't watch a ton of TV. And as Julia joked at the beginning of this episode, I watch things really slowly if I do. So I'm like,
agonizing.
I mean, we finished a show. Like, that's incredible for me.
Yeah.
Like, it took us 3 freaking months. It's not even that long. But it was good. It was good to have a reprieve from the rest of what was going on in my life, to have this is a very important scheduled block of time. And what I'm doing is watching TV with my friend. And that's very lovely. So I started the book similar to you before I started the show, but then finished the show before I finished the book. So definitely a lot of my understanding and experience of the book and the show is informed by the other. I also did that really annoying thing where I let my library ebook expire and I hadn't switched my e-reader over to airplane mode, so I lost my copy.
Oh no.
And then it took me like another 3 months to like actually go back and get it and like wait in the queue to get the book back. So there was like a very long stretch between sections like 2 and 3 of the book for me. So if I'm a little fuzzy on some details from the middle of the book, you'll know why. But overall, I really enjoyed both the show and the book. And I liked the kind of introspective feel of kind of like sitting next to a friend who's telling you about like their love life and their friends and their family in a very like conversational way. And I found it very emotionally relatable, even if like the context and experience of the main character is like so vastly different than my own, which I think is like the mark of really strong writing and really strong narrative, is when you can be super specific and in that people find relatability.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's like sitting down with someone you've recently gotten really close to, and they're like catching you up on their lore.
Exactly,
That's kind of what it feels like when you're reading the book, yeah.
Right, because it's like on a surface level, like, I'm not Korean, I'm not a gay man, my mom isn't dying of cancer, I haven't had like lots of tragic romantic breakups in my life, like I don't have HIV, like there's just like a lot of things that are not the same for me and this main character, but the writing is in a way that you get drawn into the emotion. And like you said, like a friend that you're getting to know, you're like, oh my gosh, I care about you, I want to know the why, the how, the story behind who you are.
You could almost see it as like the 4 sections are like 4 different conversations where like a certain topic was brought up. I'll get into this in a bit, but like structurally it's very sort of topic or like relationship based rather than time based. So it's like the second section you like sat down and you were like both spewing your religious trauma and it like came up, you know, out of order.
Yeah.
And You mentioned all these things you're not, that our author is, so why don't you tell us about him?
Yeah. Song-Young Park is a Korean writer. He writes novels, essays, and now a TV script. He was born in 1988 in Daegu, South Korea. He studied journalism and French in undergrad and then pursued graduate studies in creative writing. As you alluded to, Julia, he has a lot in common with our main character. There's a lot of overlap, both being writers, gay men, having religious parents. He debuted as an author with his collection of short stories, The Tears of an Unknown Artist, or Zaytun Pasta, which came out in 2018. Love in the Big City was his first novel, published in 2019 in Korean, and the English translation was then published in 2021. And since then, he's published 2 additional novels that have yet to be translated into English, as well as some essays and memoirs and things. Recently, as we mentioned, Love in the Big City was turned into a movie and a TV show. These were completely separate productions, and Sang-Young wrote the screenplay for the TV show, so he's more associated with that one. Anton Hur translated Love in the Big City. You might remember this name from our Beyond the Story 10-year record of BTS episode with friends Adam and RJ from the Boys Love podcast. Yeah, as Julia mentioned, that was kind of our introduction to Anton Hur.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we kind of go off about him for a long time in that episode because we were like Instagram following him and just like seeing what he was up to. And like, we think he's really cool. We should follow his writing and his translation work. Love in the Big City was longlisted for the International Booker Prize in 2022, which is the same year that Anton Hur's translation of Bora Chung's Cursed Bunny was also shortlisted for the prize.
Wow.
He was having a fantastic year as a translator. We will, yeah. And then he went on to be one of the judges, I think in 2025 for the Booker International Prize. Yeah.
He's been posting about that. I think the list was just released.
Yeah. I mean, one reason we really enjoy Anton Hur is that he is funny and very personable and kind of like pulls back the curtain and doesn't like give 2 shits about like the tradition of publishing world, but also is very much steeped in it as well. So he criticizes it from within. So I found a few things that I really enjoyed in his interview with Booker International Prize, the year that he was longlisted twice. This is about Love in the Big City specifically. He said, "My absolute favorite thing about the novel is the humor in Sang-Young's prose. English takes to humor and irony naturally, thanks to centuries of fantastic writers of the English language who have made English such pliable and endlessly creative material. I really enjoyed using words like stigmatized in a literary translation." Now a Booker-nominated literary translation, no less. Which I thought was
he's so
fun.
great.
Yeah, he said it was a pretty straightforward translation, and he actually surprised the author by just like plonking the PDF in his inbox, being like, "Here it is," without any kind of back and forth like clarifying questions, because he's like, Sang-Young's writing was really approachable, and like he was able to kind of find the voice within it, and he didn't really have a lot of questions of like, what were you trying to do here, or anything like that. Yeah, Her also said in the interview, "I asked Sang-Young who his influences were, and he named some, thankfully, English writers that were especially useful in triangulating the Sang-Young Park voice in English. I ended up going with David Sedaris, Chuck Palahniuk, and my own gay self as the voice of Sang-Young Park, and I think it turned out fine."
Yeah.
And Anton Hur also does, he does translations both ways, so Korean to English and English to Korean, so he's in the process of, I don't know where in the process, but I know he's the one doing the Korean translation of Ocean Vuong's collection.
Oh, I love that.
Night Sky with Exit Wounds.
Wow. Poetry must be so challenging to translate.
Yeah.
That's like a whole other level of, I mean, trying to get like cadence and line spacing and rhyme and whew. Okay. That's very cool.
Okay, let's dive into the book itself. Do you want to walk us through, like, what is the plot? What is the summary of what's happening in this book?
Yeah. So there's 4 very distinct sections that overlap in terms of time. Each one is focused on a particular relationship that the main character, Go Young, has. Either platonic or familial or romantic. And then there's also kind of a couple key themes that each of those sections explore. So the first section is when he's in college, early 20s, and it's about his sort of the best friend he's ever had, really. It's about his friendship with a young woman named Jae-hee. They are both sort of social outcasts, and they end up getting an apartment together and being roommates and kind of doing their college early 20s together. And then it ends when she's married and she kind of leaves his life. And so it's very much like young friendship, gaining and losing a best friend. Yeah, just being young in your early 20s. And it also explores the kind of laying the groundwork of the similarities and differences of gender and sexuality in the contemporary South Korean culture, right? So Jae-hee gets an abortion in this story. There's an incredible line that I can't remember word for word that gets taken from the book, directly put into the show. It's like almost word for word. And it's basically like, through being friends with Jae-hee, I learned it sucks to be a gay man in Korea and it sucks to be a woman in Korea. That one tickles me. They both sort of support each other and they talk about men together and it's this very beautiful, sacred thing. And then it ends when she gets married and he can't get married, like, legally. And so their lives can't align in terms of advancing through the predetermined stages of adulthood, you know. So there's that phase. Phase 2, or section 2, sort of tracks, it's the longest section, and it tracks 2 of Go-young's relationships. The first one is with his mother, and the second one is with a long-term boyfriend. I think it's technically the longest relationship he has in the book. It's not a good one. It's just long. And both of them explore kind of the particular difficulties of being queer in South Korea relating to religion. Go-young's mother is super religious and he carries a lot of that religious guilt, and it's revealed like his mother had him institutionalized or tried to when she found out he was gay, and their relationship is just very tense. But then we meet him in the moment where his mother has been diagnosed with cancer, and so he's sort of helping her through the end of her life, and it's this kind of long, years-long process now that their relationships are switched, like kind of wrestling with how your relationship with your parents changes over time when they've, like, hurt you when you were young. And then side by side with that is his relationship with this guy who's, like, deeply, deeply closeted, who thinks that being gay, like, on an intellectual and political level is sort of evil. He's coming at it from the angle of, like, being gay is a Western thing and we need to remove all American influence. Like, America is the reason that Korea is split in half, and it's the reason that we're, like, everything went wrong, and so we need to get rid of all things America. And that includes being gay, which is a complicated stance that we do not have time to unpack. But anyway, Go-young, like, really takes on all this shame from both of these people who he has in his life for a very long time. And then the third section is where we tackle HIV stigma in the queer community specifically, and then sort of the structural barriers outside of it. So, you know, Go-young tries to move to another country and, like, you can't get a visa if you know, test positive for HIV. So there's sort of layers to it. And then it also tracks his relationship with Gyuho, who I think it's technically a shorter relationship than the second guy, but we spend more time with it. And it seems like a more significant relationship because it's one based on more openness and, like, genuine love. So, like, this is the first relationship that the first guy Go-young has told.
But he doesn't have access to basically what we call PrEP in America.
Yeah.
Which is what partners can take to prevent contracting HIV, the spread of the virus. And so that is, like, one of the big conflicts in that relationship, is that his partner, you know, wants to be together, and Go-young kind of holds himself back, being like, you don't want to deal with me, and all that stigma and shame. But they do travel together and have an opportunity to get at least some supply of the basically PrEP for a little bit.
Yeah, so that story is really about, like, letting yourself be loved or not, and someone seeing you for who you really are, and kind of the beauty and discomfort of that. And then section 4 is kind of getting old. He's getting older. He's sort of combing over his life and his past, but specifically his relationship with Gyuho. He's traveling to Thailand with this new guy who's just kind of, he's a little strange. This, like, rich businessman is just like, I'm lonely, come with me to Thailand. And they end up staying in the same hotel that Go-young and Gyuho stayed in on their trip. And so he's sort of, there's this layer of 2 different times that Go-young has been in these spaces. And so he's reliving the 2 different points in time at the same time in his head. And so we're switching back and forth, and we're seeing him, like, think about and revisit what was happening in that relationship and think about himself and kind of seeing himself maybe as he really is and come to some conclusions about himself moving into his 30s. So, and then it ends realizing that all he wanted was Gyuho, and then that's the end of the book, and it's really sad.
I thought it was interesting to open the book that's called Love in the Big City. Mm-hmm. At least the English translation is. And the first real love story we get is actually a story of friendship.
Yeah.
I mean, I teared up multiple times during the TV show, but it definitely in the first section with Go-young and Jae-hee, like, kind of being that found family together. Yeah. And, like, in the book, it's much more starkly like they're kind of their only friend. In the TV show, Go-young has more of a friend group, but the 2 of them kind of see each other through some of their worst and, like, lowest points and kind of, like, find that support that they're not getting from their families by being, like, roommates together. It's very sweet.
It makes me want to watch the movie because I think we get Jae-hee's perspective more. And we get to explore her relationship with her mother more. Because you get a sense that she's avoiding her mother. Mm-hmm. Even though I think her mother owns the apartment they live in. Or her name is on the lease. And it's like a 7-year lease kind of deal. And I would love to get more of her interior life. We get a little bit more in the TV show. It's a very youthful, bittersweet kind of way to start the story. First of all, this is what a real, genuine connection looks like, regardless of what type of love it is, right? We're starting there as kind of our baseline. But also I think it contrasts, like, the limitations a gay man might experience in terms of life milestones. You know, if marriage and family are not available to you in the way that they are for women, even if some women may be like, yeah, nah, fuck that. It's more of a choice for women, perhaps. Maybe. Depending on your class, perhaps. But I think it sort of, this diverging paths at the end, to me, I think kind of sets us up for the main theme of the book, which is, or one of the main themes of the book, which is loneliness and this feeling of being stuck.
Yeah.
And you're sort of comparing everyone to Jae-hee. You're like, will anyone ever understand him the way that Jae-hee did?
Yeah, will he let himself just be himself around anyone in the way he did with her?
Right. Two-way street.
And then when we do get into more of the romantic love, there is that kind of love-hate relationship that Go-young has with love. You pulled a quote that I thought was really great at kind of capturing how this swings for him between, like, love is beautiful and love is something that catches you and you have to deal with.
Yeah. In the book, after the second guy who is deeply closeted and kind of an asshole leaves him, and Go-young has tried to take his own life, he's lying in the ICU, and this is the thought he has. He says, "To me, love is a thing you can't stop when you're caught in it. A brief moment you can escape from only after it turns into the most hideous thing imaginable when you distance yourself from it. This is the uncomfortable truth about love that I learned in the ICU and recovery wards." his understanding of romantic love at that point is like, because I think this is the only long-term relationship he's had so far. And so he's like, love is this kind of force that happens to you that you can't stop. Once you're out of it, you're like, oh, that's horrifying. He realizes how messed up that relationship was. And so then he sort of draws all these conclusions about love, what love is, that I feel like he carries with him throughout the rest of the book. Like, this one guy sort of really royally screws Go Young over in terms of his expectations of what love could look like. But then also you think about, like, he maybe didn't have the highest expectations to begin with if he was already being like, well, I guess this is what a relationship is.
Right.
He never wants to be seen with me in public. Even if we're not holding hands. He doesn't even want to be in the same room with me. I'll just put up with this forever.
Yeah. And even from, like, the beginning, when we're first being introduced to this character, the sense is like, no, Go Young, why? Why him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he keeps saying about how, like, he feels like he has nothing to say and that it's awkward and, like, this guy is kind of mysterious, but in a way that it seems like he's trying to be mysterious because he's an intellectual.
Oh my god, there were so many red flags. I was screaming at the page. I was like, this is an intellectual fuckboy. Like, don't be impressed by this. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's described as a bit older, probably a few years older than Go Young is, and still refers back to his, like, student activist days as if that was, like, the glory days of his political involvement. Yeah, like, if only you saw me then, or, like, you don't understand what it's like. Mm-hmm. And he was, like, once arrested.
For, like, a night.
Yeah, that was a tough relationship to read. Again, in that sense of, like, this feels like a friend who's telling me a thing that happened, and you're like, what are you doing, friend?
You're like, girl, why did you do that? Yeah. I don't know. He has this very much push and pull thing with love that I think a lot of people connect to, where it's like he wants this so badly. He wants to be loved. He wants to be in a relationship so badly, and yet he self-sabotages constantly and, like, sets himself up to be unhappy. Like, even when he has a chance to be happy, like, won't let himself, you know. Gyuho tells him to his face. And it's so, oh my god, it's so sweet. Basically, Go Young tells him that he's HIV positive, and then assumes that Gyuho's gonna want to leave him. And Gyuho's like, no, because you're you.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. So sweet, so adorable. But I think you just watch the train wreck happen with the both of them because I think neither of them really believe that they're worthy of, like, a respectful love, you know? Like, Gyuho lets Go Young walk all over him because there's this, like, home insecurity, or, like, he clearly has this insecurity of, like, if I stick up for myself or if I need anything, he's gonna kick me out or he's gonna leave me or whatever. That's Gyuho's thing. And then Go Young is like, I need to make myself as insufferable as possible to see if he'll leave because he's going to eventually.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah, the kind of,
so
like,
tough, man.
From a distance makes no sense, but, like, you see people do it all the time because that's what makes sense to them, is like, I need to push this person away so they leave for their own good.
Yes. And you're just like, they get a choice in the matter.
Right, yeah. You don't need to be a martyr for them. Also, if you want out, you can get out. Mm-hmm. You don't have to push someone away until they leave you.
Oh, yeah. The parent shit.
Yeah. That was interesting, too. Again, a book about love in the big city, and this is a lot to do with his relationship with his mother, and a bit with his father as well, who kind of, like, left for another woman. But also, as you get to know Go Young's mom, you're like, she's kind of not great. But also, his dad is kind of like, we don't really get much of him in the book, but not great either. None of them are great.
Yeah.
So I watched the show first when we see that kind of flashback of him caught on a playground kissing a boy for the first time and his mom's reaction. And that was so hard to watch. And then also, again, to read. And his mom basically immediately puts him in like a basically conversion therapy, mental institution kind of deal for like an entire summer. Like, that's just like, he goes back to school and like, that's what he did for the summer, was just like locked away at this conversion therapy thing. And it's never addressed, you know, the kind of family that like just never talks about what happened. And that is kind of where Go Young is at this point in the book, when his mother's sick with cancer, being like, are we ever going to talk about this stuff? And the answer is kind of no. You know, it's never really addressed for either of them.
This is where it's a motif throughout the book, but I think it's particularly prominent in this section where we get long sections of Go Young's thoughts are written in italics. And we get that throughout the book, but it's really, really thoroughly used in this section because he'll be having whole conversation. He'll be in the room with his mother and they're not really saying much to each other. And he'll be having a whole conversation with her in his head of what he wants to say to her. And then he never says it. And it's so well done and so relatable. Because you're just like, coming from a family that doesn't talk about things, the way that you sort of keep business as usual, and there's this feeling of like, if we do talk about it, then our relationship will be over, and neither of us want that. I think they both want each other in their lives, and you get more in the show that like she changes a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was well done, and you get a little more of her perspective and what she knows. And you get this, particularly, there's that one scene where Go Young wants to introduce his mom to his boyfriend. And she knows what it's about, and he knows what it's about, but neither of them say it. And then his boyfriend doesn't show up because he's a piece of shit. And then his mom just goes, oh, what a relief. Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
The underlying tone in all of their conversations is like, if we address the elephant in the room, we won't have a relationship anymore. And that is more intolerable to both of us than what we're currently experiencing. Or that's what they think, right? Which I don't think would be the case. I think if they actually talk to each other, I think it could get better. I think it's possible. Depends on if his mother cares more about her status in the church and her social role and what people think of her, or as she's dying, does she care more about her son? This is an internal monologue quote that I pulled from when they're sitting at the park, if you wanted to read it.
I wish you'd apologize to me for once in my life. About trampling on my heart that time, about giving birth to me this way, raising me this way, then deciding to push me away into a place I can't come back from, into a world of ignorance and being ignored. I wish you would apologize for that. I know that what happened to me wasn't really what you had wanted to happen, and I know it's not anyone's fault. I know that, but just kind of that kind of running rumination on like, I want you to apologize, but I know it won't change anything, and I know it's not really your fault, but I need you to apologize, but it's not going to change anything. Like, just kind of talking himself out of even ever having the conversation. I've been reading, I think I talked about it in our last episode, this book called True to You, How to Be Your Full Self and Stop People-Pleasing, something like that, by Dr. Kathleen Smith.
Your people-pleasing recovery manual.
Yeah. And a lot of the book is using Bowen family systems therapy approach by some dude named Bowen. I don't remember his full name. I assume he's a doctor. And one of the things Dr. Kathleen Smith comes back to several times is that when it comes to family dynamics, the question of why becomes unhelpful and uninteresting. And what's more useful and what can be more helpful and maybe more interesting to the future of your relationship with people is how. How do we keep doing this kind of triangulation of emotions? How does that keep happening? And what is a way that you could then move forward from that? And maybe it's to stop assuming things about another person, or to give someone an open-ended question and a chance to like talk for themselves instead of for you to write the script in your head like our character Go Young does of like what's happening.
Sort of similar to that with those kind of cycles or those stories that you tell in your head. I think Another one that was pretty relatable in the book was how the story he tells himself about his friends, his gay friends. And we'll talk about how it's different in the show and what that does. But in the book, we get very few references to them, except in the third section when he's dating Gyuho. And we get a bit more of his friend group that he's in, called the Tiaras. Because they're each a member of Tiara. He gets to be Soyeon. He doesn't think that he belongs there. And it's very similar to what he does in his romantic relationships and what he does with his mom, right? He writes this story in his head of who he is. With his friends specifically, he has this kind of imposter syndrome, anxious person thing where it's like, oh, my friends don't really want me around, or like, I need to be useful so that they keep me in the friend group or whatever. And I think in the show we can see that they genuinely really love him, which I think is a really interesting choice for the author to make. Like, was that the truth the whole time, perhaps, as we're reading this book, you know? And this is genuinely just a story that Go Young tells himself. Like, his friends all do really love him, and he's just like, no, I'm just like someone they carry around. He phrases it as like, I was the backdrop to my gorgeous friends, the big mama figure taking care of the drunk young'uns at the end of the night who couldn't flag down a cab. He's like, if I am useful to them as like a den mother, they will keep me around, but I'm not pretty like them. Yeah. I'm not glamorous like them. I don't have as many Instagram followers, right? I think, he's not a super reliable narrator about himself.
Yeah. No.
But I feel like, isn't that such a common thing to be in your 20s and being with friends you made as adults and feeling like, oh, they all have their lives together so much more than I do, or they all have relationships, or they are all have certain X status symbol that I don't, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, they know how to show up in this space, and I'm just the awkward one over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to figure out that, like, no, we're all pretending.
Yeah. Or the difference is they're 25 and I'm 22, and they've just been figuring it out for 3 more years than I have, which is a notable amount of time when you're a young adult, just starting to, like, find your place in the world and know not to show up exactly at the time the party says it's starting, because that's not when anyone else shows up.
Do you speak from personal experience here?
Thankfully, my very generous friend, our good friend, just looked at me and kind of was like, girl, why are you here? But do you want to help? And I'm like, you said it started at 7. It's like 6:55. Didn't want to be late.
Oh, Victoria.
And then, okay, as we skim towards, like, later in the book, we have this scene that I think is very, like, even though there isn't a super strong plot arc, I think this is maybe a climactic moment of, like, understanding a core theme of this book. We have a scene where Go Young and Gyuho are traveling somewhere, or they're just like in a new part of the city, and someone has like Chinese lanterns to like write a wish on it and like send it away. Go Young has this moment where he's trying to figure out what to do, and he writes, I'd started writing so many things on that lantern, fixing my life many times. To succeed in my diet, to win the apartment lottery, to have a Porsche Cayenne, to have a best-selling debut. None of them was what I really wished for, so I crossed out all the words. In the end, I left just 2 syllables on the lantern. Gyuho, my only wish. And then the devastating part is that because he had, when they sent their lantern off, like he wrote on one side and Gyuho wrote on the other, it bursts into flames, right? And starts sinking.
He wrote on it so many times that he poked a hole in it. He crossed off so many times.
Yeah, if you imagine like a Sharpie that's maybe a little new, going a little hard at it, and he tore a hole in the paper, and so it bursts into flames and sinks down into the water. And it doesn't float off into the horizon like everyone else's does. And so it's this very kind of symbolic, kind of on the nose moment of him being like, I wished for everything, I didn't know what I wanted, and then it was too late. By spending all that time pushing Gyuho away, by not letting himself fully be loved and commit to the relationship, by really kind of pushing Gyuho like, no, you move to China like we planned, I'm not going to hold you back, as kind of a cover-up, a self-sabotage for him to be like, he was never going to stay with me anyways. How could I ever let myself be the person who held him back?
And it, like, takes all this time of reflection later on in life to realize what he actually wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't even let himself want things. Didn't even let himself acknowledge what he wanted out of his life. Because it's like, he just has this assumption that it's not going to happen. And it ends up becoming like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yeah.
And it really summarizes the book there, where it's like his journey of combing through all these things that maybe do or don't matter and trying to figure out what does matter and what he does want. And it's too late for any of his relationships that he has talked about in the book so far. It's too late for all of them, but he at least has come to some knowledge of himself. Mm-hmm. That maybe there's hope that, like, in the future he can carry that forward and maybe make some changes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the TV show now and kind of the adaptation choices that were made. I think, in summary for me, it's a very strong adaptation. And as we've talked about in our members-only film club episodes, where we specifically discuss book to TV and book to film adaptations, a good adaptation for me is one that stands alone as its own good piece of work, good piece of art. Like, it's a good TV show first and foremost, and it also holds true to themes, important moments, important characters of the original source text in a way that feels really respectful, but also, like, interestingly changing things to make it fit better for television. I think a huge part of that is that the author was the screenwriter, and so that the choice is being made of, okay, we're going to make this character more important and we're going to highlight this relationship more. We actually get a third relationship, or a fourth, or whatever. I don't know which ones we're counting. There's a relationship that's said in passing in the book. I dated a guy who was like this, but he becomes like a central character in the first couple episodes.
I think it's two different guys get sort of blended together. Mm-hmm. The way it is in the book with Jae-hee, it's sort of like, here's a few different examples of me being bad at relationships. Yeah, in the show they're combined into one man.
So yeah, there's a lot of decisions being made that are still very true and honoring to the original book and make it a good TV show on its own, because the book is so introspective that if we just really stuck with our main character the whole TV show, it might have been a little too much. It already was kind of slow, but not in a bad way. But I think it could have been slow in a bad way if we did not get outside of our main character more into his friends and community and the different people he dates.
Yeah. The casting of the actors for the characters, I feel like has the author / screenwriter himself, Park himself, has acknowledged had an impact on how the translation into TV went. And it was kind of out of his hands in certain ways, because they were trying to make, I don't mean to disparage the queer media that is typically made in Korea in the BL world, but as their industry currently...
BL meaning?
Boys love. It's a genre that came out of Japan, Japanese manga that has morphed and now lives in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Thailand. You've probably heard of the Thai ones the most. And a little bit in the Philippines. And it's basically romance for gay men, specifically. There's also girls' love. They make them separate genres. I don't know why. It has a lot of just generic romance tropes, but it also has some internal tropes and styling of its own. And it is given very few resources and almost no budget. So... their trip for this, right, this is a well-respected Booker Prize long-listed novel that was being adapted by these 4 highly respected directors, and it had government funding. It was this, like, highbrow thing, for lack of a better term, and it was very hard to get actors to play these characters, according to the author, especially for their main character, because their main character needed to be like a really good actor who could carry this whole show, right? No one really wanted to audition, and they had a hard time finding people for all the characters. And then the guy who played Go-young, he just volunteered. His representation didn't really want him to, And he was just like, nah, this sounds fun. Let's do it. He'd been coming out of a period of not working much. So some people were like, oh, he just wants money. Like, who cares?
Perfectly valid reason to want a job for money.
He was like, this sounds interesting and fun. I've never done this before. And he put his whole ass into this.
He did so well. Like, when you told me they had a hard time casting the show, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, the actors did so great. Like, were they all super competitive for these roles? Because, like, hello, they're great. Nam Yoon-soo is the...
Nam Yoon-soo, that's right. Nam Yoon-soo plays Go-young, and Jin Ho-eun plays Gyu-ho. They all did an incredible job. Nam Yoon-soo's so good in this. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine the show working without him. But they got very lucky that he wanted to do it. And he told his representation, hello, I'm going to do this show. You can't stop me. When I think most actors who would have fit the description, like, were not sent this job. And then Jin Ho-eun, who played Gyu-ho, he's done a lot of press after the fact. This is like his kind of first named character, I believe. I think he's been in other things kind of in the background. And so he's done a bunch of press for it. And he clearly feels very, very passionate about this story. He read the book and had a very specific idea of who Gyu-ho was in his mind. And he was like, I have to play... When he saw that there was a TV show, he's like, I have to play Gyu-ho because I know exactly who this character is and exactly how I would interpret it. And he showed up, and his interpretation of Gyu-ho was different than how the author had imagined him. But then in conversation together... realized, like, oh, wait, actually, this is great. This is really good. You do know who Gyu-ho is. You have to play him.
It's funny because, like, we got to the scenes of the TV show with Gyu-ho before I had read the character. And so for me, I'm like, he nailed it. What are you talking about? But I know I'm completely biased by the fact that I saw him play the role before I read the character.
It's easy, I think, if you've seen it acted, to then put those subtle, the subtext that you got from how he played the character, and you put those emotions onto what you read.
Yeah.
But I think if you're just reading it, you could interpret it a couple ways. But I think that's partly because Go-young is a biased narrator, right? Whereas, like, an actor who sees that character so clearly and can bring Gyu-ho to life outside of the interpretation that Go-young is making of him, makes all these choices, and they make complete sense, you know, from that character's perspective. But the thing that ends up happening with both of these people is that they're both so tall and so beautiful.
I know. It was very jarring to be, like, go into the book and see all these descriptions and, like, the main character being like, I'm so plain and short and not attractive like my very attractive Instagram famous friends. And I'm like, are you? But then you pointed out off mic that, like, it could also be a part of the, like, self-sabotage characteristic of, even if he wasn't movie star attractive, like he is in the TV show, do we really think he's as unattractive as he writes himself to be? When there's a lot of ways that he puts himself down that we can sense is not truly how other people think of him or what they think of him.
There's a part in the Gyu-ho section where he mentions that he says that they're both getting really fat. And I was like, that's probably an exaggeration based on how he thinks about himself. But B, it just does not happen in the show.
Yeah.
But I do think it's also interesting to have him be so beautiful in the show. It sort of reveals that a lot of his negative self-talk is straight up lies, right? It highlights the hypocrisy or the self-sabotage a lot more, I think. But can we talk about the friends? We have to talk about the tiaras.
The friends are some of my favorite characters of the TV show. And, like, you and I would just kind of blow up our text thread every time they were on screen.
Yes, I love them.
Because we're like, they're so great and supportive. And, like, yes, there are some ways that Go-young, like, doesn't open up to them because of his concern about stigma around HIV. And sometimes you feel like they're not totally there with him, like on the same wavelength. You know, that time when your friends are having one kind of night and you're having another one and it's just like not compatible.
Yeah.
But they show up for him in some of his darkest moments. And I think that is one of the most significant differences between the book and the TV show.
Oh, 100%.
And I think makes it such a strong TV show because we get an ensemble of characters that we care about because we know they care about our hero.
I could talk about this for hours. Like, I can see on a practical level why the author would probably be like, I need like 3 people who can represent all of gay culture in this show, right? We have a budget. We also need people. It can't be so, Goyon can't be so in his head all the time. We have to build his character through his relationships and conversations with other people so that we know what's going on, right? It can't just be constant voiceover for 8 hours. So, like, there is that kind of practical level of, like, these characters already exist. Let's just make the tiaras, like, a whole consistent character throughout the show, right? It's very practical. But what it does to some of those big moments is truly wild. What it does in particular to the scene where he tries to take his own life and he ends up in the hospital. The way I wept watching that scene in the show where, like, he wakes up and his mom isn't super comforting. She's just kind of there. And then he hears this commotion and it's his 3 friends, like, banging on the windows, like, so excited that he's alive and, like, so just full of love and just, like, giving him finger hearts. And, like, there's one who's, like, fighting with an orderly trying to, and, like, falls down. And it's chaotic.
So dramatic, but it's so fun.
It's so
and it makes
good.
me smile, right? Because like, I think in the book, I don't know about the show, his mom says, like, you don't have to try so hard. That's going to happen anyways. Like, you don't have to try so hard to die. We're all going to end up dead anyways. Like, very not comforting, right? Like, but to have that moment where the friends really come through. And I think also, again, gives that stark contrast to how he thinks about himself versus what is reality.
Yes.
He felt so alone and devastated at the end of that relationship. And the reality is that he has a found family, his gay besties who love him and know him and see all of him. Yeah. So heartwarming to have that, where it's really sad in the book because it's just his mom. And then we just kind of move on. Like, he didn't die. And here he is again, making it through life.
In the show, it radically changes your perspective as a viewer, but also, like, what the scene means.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the meaning of it is not like that quote we mentioned earlier of, like, how love just kind of sweeps you up and then it's horrible from the outside, right? That's his main takeaway in that moment. That loneliness and how icky love is. And the takeaway from the scene in the show is, like, you are loved. You have community. You just have to open your eyes. This relationship will not define you. This specific kind of love will not define you. And, oh my God, is it different? Whew. And you can see how his suicide attempt impacts his friends throughout the remaining 4 episodes. Like, after his breakup with Gyuho, his friends are, like, blowing up his phone because they haven't heard from him in a while, and they all come tumbling very comically through his front door. And you can hear them through the door, like, is he dead? I think he just hasn't texted us. What's going on? And you can hear them whispering outside, and they're freaking out and trying not to be too overbearing. And then they come tumbling through his front door, and it's so cute, and they just love him so much. And it's so different. Changes what the book is about and what the story is about in a lot of ways. Like, because then you have at the end, the ending becomes quite different as well.
Yeah, so the ending of the TV series left me with my jaw on the ground and immediately calling Julia to be like, I need to process this.
Yeah.
The book kind of just ends, right? He's reflecting. He's grown a lot in his 20s. He's in his early 30s. life moves on. He's learned more about himself. Cool. The TV show ends with a hint that Gyuho has moved back to Seoul. No resolution whether or not he's going to pop up. We're waiting. Maybe we're going to get a text message. We're going to see Go Young, like, pull out his phone and start drafting. Like, we don't get any of that. We just hear he's coming back. And we have, I think another thing that's really pronounced in the TV show is that Go Young lives in the same apartment from the moment he moves in with Jae-hee through the rest of it.
Yes.
And so he's really rooted in this place where all these memories are. And it's also very small and, like, not a lot of light. And, like, has built up, you know, all the memories around him, all the piles of books, all the furniture from other people he hasn't got rid of. Like, so he has a very significant, I'm moving out. And his friends help him move into a new apartment. It's spacious. He doesn't have, like, furniture in it yet. And they go to the rooftop and there's, like, fireworks or sparklers or something like that. And they're kind of having this friendship celebration of moving on and having, like, a new chapter in life. So it's a lot more hopeful. But we also, like, what? Gyuho's back and we're just not gonna do anything. We're just gonna know that and we're gonna move on. And
a lot of fans of the show were clamoring for a season 2 because they're like, it's left much more open-ended. It's like, yes, this chapter of my life has closed and I'm ready for a new start, and me and all my girlfriends are single again for the first time and we're sort of starting over. But with that theme of starting over, if Gyuho is back, like, what if we had a second go at it, knowing everything we know now and, like, having ruminated on what he did wrong and all these things. It leaves that room for continuing the story in a way that it really does not in the book. And a lot of people were like, where's season 2? And I really don't think they had ever intended to make a season 2, but it feels like there could be, and there should be, or maybe a movie, right? That's just 2 hours of Gyuho again. The world wants it.
I think it'd be really interesting to see Gyuho with his own growth and having his own independence, right? Like, a lot of his character is that he is a support for the people he lives with. So he was like he moves to Seoul to basically be a caregiver for his brother who's in medical school and, like, cannot be bothered to clean and cook. And then he moves in with Go Young and they, again, he takes a bit more of the caretaker role. And so I think it would be really interesting to see his character after he's been able to go off and have this independent experience and have more separation, come back to that. And, you know, in my mind, they would both want to be back together again on different terms. And then it's kind of like The Pairing, which is another love story where two people break up and have personal growth trajectories and come back together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love that. I want to see how they date each other when they both live in the city and Gyuho is living in his own apartment by himself and has his own space.
And maybe a bit more stability that he's not working, like, 3 jobs and like running around doing everything.
And, like, why did he come back so early, right? Like, why is he... What did he realize about himself that he's like, I need to come back?
Season 2, we want it.
Season 2! Give us a second season, please! I need to know! That would be so great.
This book made me think a lot about how I think about who I was in my early 20s now that I am nearing 30. Both of us turn 30 in a few months.
It's becoming a theme. We talked about Saturn Return with The Pairing, and now here we are talking about love in your 20s from the vantage point of almost no longer being in your 20s.
So how did you conceive of yourself when you were in your early 20s? How do you think of that self now that you're older?
So when I was in my 20s, I did not think I was as visible and, like, present in the world and readable as I actually was. Like, I had a kind of a tough conversation with a friend a couple months ago, you know, someone who had known me for a really long time and was, like, telling me how I felt about a thing. because they knew me so well, how I had responded to a thing when I was like 22. And me, as a 29-year-old, just now realizing that that was how I felt. And my friend being like, yeah, that was clear to everybody. Or that was very clear to me, at least, being, you know, your good friend of many years. It was kind of a moment where I was like, oh, yeah, I spent a good chunk of my, like, teenage and early adulthood years thinking I was kind of invisible and that I was just kind of a camera, you know, and that the things going on inside my head no one could see, and it wasn't having any interplay with my body, how I was holding myself, what my face looked like, whatever. And then no one could tell what I felt, because I couldn't tell what I felt. Couldn't have articulated it to you if I tried. So I didn't think anyone else knew. And, you know, maybe people who didn't know me would misread me, but, like, if you knew me well, you could probably tell how I felt about things, and that never occurred to me. Part of my early 20s was the slow realization that people can see me and I am a human interacting with the world and I have a body and, like, coming back down into myself. And that has been very much the journey of my 20s. And I think Go Young has something kind of similar. Like, he thinks he's so self-aware because he's, like, self-deprecating. And there's so much about himself that he doesn't know. Other people, especially the way you watch it in the show, right? Especially when you see Gyuho and his friends and stuff, like, they are responding to his actual feelings that he refuses to articulate and maybe doesn't even recognize in himself. Mm-hmm. They know things about what he feels that he does not know and are responding in kind. A lot of this book is him just learning about himself and realizing what he wants and what matters to him and, like, his own feelings about things and not tamping them down thinking that they're not important because, I don't know, maybe they don't matter. Maybe he's scared of wanting things and being hurt. Maybe, like, he doesn't think he deserves love. You know, you could go into this whole analysis of why he does what he does, but he really pushes down his own wants and desires and instead just kind of lives in this negativity and sarcasm and pushing things away. And he doesn't think his friends care about him. And I'm curious where the hand of the author over the years plays into this, or if it's just like an accident of translation. But, like, the author chose to add those scenes of his friends caring about him in the show. And so it makes you question, like, in the author's mind, were those friends there the whole time? And Go Young was just like, oh, they don't care about me. Yeah. Oh, I'm just here because I give them snacks and I get them cabs. Like, they don't actually, you know what I mean? Is there an element of the author also looking back on from a further vantage point and being like, oh, silly little guy, you were loved, right? And people know you better than you think. And just getting out of your own head and into your body and into the world is such a huge, I think, highly relatable 20s experience.
I think that is similar to how I look at my young 20s now. Like, I see it as an ensemble show. Like, I have a bit of a rosy tint around the constant friendship, right, that I had around me, that we had around each other as roommates. Yeah. I had a ton of coworker friends and, like, the book club girlies and my kickball crew and, like, my college friends who still lived in the same area. Like, I think back to that person and I'm like, wow, she definitely was feeling lost and unsure of herself in many ways, and, like, the growing pains of, like, young 20s making your way in the world. But wow, look at all the wonderful people she was surrounded with. It might be a reflection of the fact, too, that now in my late 20s, I moved away from that city, and so many of my friends from that period have too. And even the friends who are still there, we're still kind of in that same life stage together now, where it's like, do you want to get dinner in 2 weeks and catch up? Yeah. And less about the spontaneous hangouts with, like, the fluid group of people where, like, yeah, my coworker and I went here and then her roommate joined and then their friends came and then we left there and we went to this other person's house and then, like, and it was a Tuesday night and you're just like, what? I think when it comes to romantic love, I've had a dramatic reversal in many ways. So, like, the relationship I was in when I was, like, 21, 22, I was convinced that was the person I'd be with for the long haul. And that was very like, oh, my dating years are sweetly coming to a close. I'm ready for like forever with this person. So when that relationship ended, it was a very brutal awakening to me that I hadn't yet entered my ensemble era. Like I was living in this big city, but hadn't really invested deeply in friendships and community. That's when I kind of went off and like joined all the groups and made all the friends and went to all the hangs, because that's what I was like seeking. And I thought that my next relationship was just the beginning of me dating again, not realizing, like, joke's on me, we're still together 7 years later.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah.
I had no expectation that the person I met when I was 23 was going to be the person I was with for presumably forever. Along with the ensemble show, if my life was Love in the Big City, would also have an arc of going back to the girlies after the really intense relationship when you're like, where have you been? We never even met this person. Where have you been?
Right. Like the beginning of New Girl, I feel like.
Yeah.
That was your the show about your life. I'm Cece. Your show starts with that breakup. And Rebecca getting the largest bottle of wine I have ever laid eyes on. I don't know where she got it. Do you remember that bottle? It was like this.
I feel like you're exaggerating, but I did drink an entire bottle of wine that night.
I was shocked. I'm sure I'm exaggerating, but it was very large. It would start there, and it would be you, like, the pilot would be like you just crying on the bus every day, and then coming home and be like, I didn't cry today, guys, and we'd be like, wow, and you buy, and then your journeys into friendship and found family. That would be your show.
I'm like now singing the New Girl theme song in my head.
Who's that girl? It's V. Yeah. I think also that, like, those early years, I think I was on the struggle bus, but it does have that rosy tint because it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. It's like it's rosy because I'm sitting here at 30 look at these beautiful friendships that I've spent a decade or more cultivating, and even though we're far apart, they're still like big parts of my life. And some of the lessons I learned in how to grow a friend group, I'm now getting a chance to implement here in my new city.
Yeah.
And I had a spontaneous hang that turned into an all-night let's get dinner, let's go listen to live music kind of thing the other night. And it was just so fun. I'm like, oh, I found my people again. I think it's rosy because I'm farther removed from it, right? Like if I'm writing the story of that girl in the moment, it sucks. And it's not fun. And we didn't have much money, and our apartment really sucked.
The plumbing would break all the time, and it was freezing.
There was a step coming out of the bathroom, so everyone, whenever we host parties, would just fall out of the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because who expects a step?
And the kitchen had, like, no counter space.
There were rats.
Oh, yeah, the rats.
How do you forget the rats?
That didn't bother me as much as it bothered you.
Oh, my gosh. I tell this story at least once every 3 months to someone. Of, like, sitting on the dining room table for, like, an hour until you and our roommate came home. Because I was like, I saw a rat, and I'm not moving off this table.
You refused to leave. Yeah. Found the little poops on the couch.
Nope.
It was funny to me.
Nope. Anyways, so the life and love in a big city. Maybe that's the most relatable thing, is just, like, someone figuring out life in a...
Being surrounded by people, but you're just living in your own head.
Yes.
And trying to figure shit out, making friends and being like, are these people really my friends? I don't know. And yeah, that whole thing. Very relatable.
For those who enjoyed this book, what would you recommend they read or watch next?
I would say On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, Ocean Vuong's novel. My favorite Korean BL is To My Star 2, the sequel. Not the first one. The second one. You don't even need to watch the first one. There's a little catch up at the very beginning. Just watch the second one. Also, the Wedding Banquet remake movie. If you want, like, some really good, like, queer millennial life in the big city. It's set in Seattle. The original one was, like, a Chinese wedding, but the remake is a Korean wedding. It's excellent. So, and honestly, tonally, kind of got similar vibes of, like, Funny Girl by Nick Hornby, where it's like, because I was trying to think of a story, what's a book that has a lot of love relationships in it, but isn't about that. It's about, like, being young in a big city and dealing with, you know, social barriers. And I feel like Funny Girl, the novel, not like the musical, is a really good example of that.
Okay, so I would recommend 3 different books for different kind of aspects of Love in the Big City. Marriage of a Thousand Lies by S.J. Sindhu is, again, a slow, contemplative, queer adult. There is love story, but it's a lot about coming into your own and understanding who you are and how you want to show up in your family relationships. So similar pacing, I would say, in topic areas. For a story about specifically like emerging as a young adult and coming out of a relationship and kind of figuring out who you are again, Sea Change by Gina Chung. I love Gina Chung's writing. We've talked about her before. So good. And then for like ensemble, queer love story, One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston has a great like found family element outside of the main 2 like love interests, and is a lovely happily ever after. So, okay, so last segment of the show. What are you currently obsessed with? What is bringing you joy?
Friends, there's a new season of Taskmaster.
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is. And Jason Mantzoukas is in it. And
I've only watched the first episode, but he's excellent.
He's so chaotic, and it really suits him. And he's been wanting to be on this show for forever.
Is
and
he
I'm
the
so
first
excited.
non-UK contestant?
Mae Martin's dad is British, but they're technically Canadian. So there have been a couple Canadians on, I think.
Okay, never mind.
I'm obsessed with the baby lesbians in The Last of Us Season 2. Go support, because they're getting some hate from some assholes right now.
No.
So go support the baby lesbians. They're so cute. Finally, I worked all the way through the Locked Tomb. I finished No None of the Ninth. I have so many thoughts and feelings that I can't share with Victoria yet.
I still haven't read book 2, so.
Yeah. I need Tamsin Muir to write faster. Thank you. And then as of this current moment, I am reading the book in tandem watching the show Slow Horses by Mick Herron. It's a British crime show about MI5 spies who mess up in some way. And so they get sent, they're like the rejects, but they can't get fired because they know too much. So they get sent to this house where they like do nothing all day, and they're all bad at their jobs. And so they have to try and solve crime, and it's very funny.
I finished reading Gina Chung's collection of short stories, Green Frog, recently.
Ooh.
It was so good. Maybe my favorite short story collection I've read in several years, as far as like, without even pushing myself to be like, okay, I want to finish this book so I can mark a book off of my list this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of short story collections, you read a really great story and then you set the book down and you kind of forget you were reading it because like they're all independent stories. But the variety of characters and locations and voices just really were engaging, that each story, like, ooh, what is she going to do next? But does have like a lot of unifying themes around family and identifying what you want in life and relationships, and some like weird fantasy stuff too, and like weird animal things. If you haven't heard of the show Las Culturistas, you might be living under a rock, but
Las Culch. Get with it.
Las Culch, which I've been into for a long time, and I realized I've never recommended on the show. And I today was listening to their episode with Mike Birbiglia, and offhand they're talking about how they like know different in marketing. You would consider it like you come up with different identities to be like, these are the people we're marketing to. You give them a name and a personality.
Oh, yes.
What is that called?
Oh my God.
So anyways, they knew their audience personas, right? There's like certain, they were talking about like, Mike, what are the kind of people that come up to you most likely and say like, I really love your work, and do you have a name for them or whatever? And they're like, we have Katie. Katie is 28 to 34. She was a communications major from the Midwest, and I died. I just out loud laughed as I was cleaning my shower today because I was like, oh my God, I'm Katie. Like, and I know so many Katies, like roll of the dice, my name probably would have been Katie, right? Like, my parents didn't go super far out of the box with my name. And our generation is just like an abundance of Katies.
So many Katies and Emilys.
So anyways, I am the target demographic. So if you like this show because you feel like you're similar to me and Julia in some ways, you have some commonalities, you'll probably like Las Culch. Okay, well, thank you all for listening. I don't know if we've said this lately, but Everything we always mention in Currently Obsessed and recommendations are linked in the show notes. So if you're like, wait, what was that book and who was it by? You can find it there. Yeah. But until next time, happy reading. Bye! This has been an episode of Book Club with Julia and Victoria. A huge thank you to all of our members who keep the show going. You can also join the membership and support the show to receive special access to our film club, newsletters, and the archive of the first 50 episodes. You can find all that and more at buymeacoffee.com/bookclubwithjv. This episode was co-hosted and produced by myself, Victoria Bruick, along with Julia Clausen. Our music is composed by Greg Bruick. Our logo was designed by Gabby Febland. We want to know what you're reading and your bookish thoughts, so you can reach us at our website, bookclubwithjv.com, on Instagram at bookclubwithjv, or by leaving a review on Apple or Spotify. We'll catch you next time. Happy reading.